the liquidity event finally happened. Your company went public, or you launched a token. This is what you've been waiting for. Your options suddenly have real value. Your restricted stock units are worth more than you ever expected. Maybe your protocol launched a token, and after years of building and waiting, the liquidity event has finally happened. And that's when you usually discover the financial planning is just now beginning. The liquidity event doesn't just increase your wealth, it increases the number and the importance of the decisions you have to make. I'm Adam Blumberg. I'm a certified financial planner. I'm one of the founders of Protocol Wealth. We're an SEC registered investment advisor. And our clients are primarily in the technology and crypto realm, and they often have liquidity events either coming up or have already happened, and they have a concentrated wealth position. A reminder also that nothing I'm telling you right now is financial advice specifically for you. We don't give tax or legal advice, and I want to remind you that if you want that advice, go see your professional, your financial professional, your CPA, or your attorney, or better yet, you can just call us and we can help you with some of these issues. But right now, what I'm telling you is not necessarily financial advice specifically for you. So now let's go back to talking about liquidity events and why a liquidity event changes everything. Because before that liquidity event, and again, that liquidity event could be a token launching, it could be stock, it could be going public, it could be that you've already gone public, it could be selling the business. Before that, the question is, will this equity ever be worth anything? I've been working so hard, I have this value that's on paper, and now finally it is worth something. But now the questions start coming up. How much of this wealth can I access? What can I sell and when? If I do so, how much am I going to owe in taxes? How much should I keep? How much should I get rid of? What sort of entities should I put this in? What sort of planning do I need to do around asset protection? How much risk am I actually taking by holding on to my stock? How much risk am I taking by selling it? And most importantly, what should I do with the money if I do sell? The number, this is important, the number becoming real doesn't automatically mean the wealth has become usable. Okay, net worth, having a higher net worth is not the same as liquidity. So let's go through some examples. Let's assume that all of a sudden your company, the company that you work for, the company that you're a founder of goes public. Or launches a token. All of a sudden today, yesterday you weren't worth all that much. All of a sudden today you're worth $4 to $5 million on paper, but you still have a very real cash flow problem, right? You have options that require cash if you want to exercise them. You have restricted stock units that vest over several years. You have tokens that unlock gradually. And remember, if they're tokens, they're smart contracts, so you can't necessarily change that vesting with legal paperwork. You have tax obligations that always have to be paid in cash, and those tax obligations might not align with when stock becomes usable, when stock vests, or when tokens become usable. And they definitely don't line up with the market. They don't line up necessarily with the actual liquidity of that wealth that you have. So the questions you have to ask yourself today: what is liquid today? What will become liquid later, and when is that? What's restricted? What are my restrictions? When am I able to sell? When am I able to move some of my equity or some of my tokens? And what needs to be reserved to pay my taxes? Because remember, it's not your money until you've paid your taxes on it. So managing liquidity is often a process and not an event. Liquidity is a process, not an event. Just because you all of a sudden have a bunch of wealth that is in a liquid traded stock or a liquid traded token doesn't mean that you necessarily have easy access to that wealth. And that is what we call concentrated wealth. So psychologically, it's very difficult to be able to sell some of the stock that you have in a company that you work for or a company that you founded, or sell some of the tokens. You know that company really well. It's also psychologically difficult to sell a position that maybe you've had for a long time. We talked about this when we talked about concentrated wealth. If you are early to Bitcoin or early to ETH or early to Nvidia, it's psychologically difficult because this is what's produced a good amount of your wealth. You believe in the company, you believe in the investment, and quite honestly, it made you wealthy. You have that conviction. But yet here you are, and not only is your net worth tied to it, but your salary, your career, the reason why you get up every morning and go to work. You have stock that's tied to this company. You have options, all your future compensation. It all is tied to this one business. For many that are in the crypto world, there's token exposure, all tied kind of to the same ecosystem. And you know that ecosystem is very networked and tied together, meaning if one part of the ecosystem is hurt, yours can be hurt just by virtue of being part of crypto or being part of that particular network. So I'm not saying that concentrated stock or concentrated tokens automatically have to be sold. I'm saying if they're going to be held, they have to be held intentionally. There's a difference between deciding to keep 25% of your wealth in company stock and then waking up 3 years later to discover that 75% of your wealth is still there. So an important part that we need to talk about here, because we get contacted oftentimes by people who say, I just don't want to pay too much in taxes. Don't let taxes make the entire decision. Okay, equity compensation or token compensation has different taxable implications. Restricted stock units are taxed one way. Incentive stock options or non-qualified stock options are taxed a different way, right? For stock options, you have to come up with the cash to exercise those options, and when you receive them, you might be subject to AMT taxes. With restricted stock units, you might be subject to capital gains taxes, and whether or not they're short-term or long-term, and therefore the taxability is determined by when you decide to sell them. Is the stock of your company public or not? Is there enough liquidity in the market for your tokens? There's different tax treatments based on the different types of incentive, the different type of equity or options that you have, the timing. It all triggers different tax liabilities. But here's the very important point that we need to get across to those, especially those that contact us or those that want to contact us or go talk to their CPA or whatever, is tax minimization is not the same thing as financial planning. Your financial plan is not all about minimizing the taxes. You might avoid selling because you want more favorable tax treatment, but you might expose yourself to a tremendous amount of market risk. Or if you don't want to sell because the timing isn't right, because you think the price is going to go up, or you're waiting for a better tax treatment, now the house you might want might not be available because you didn't have the money for the down payment, or you don't have the income to show the mortgage company. So that's where a tax efficient strategy can still be a bad financial strategy. So the right question here is, how do my taxes, my risk, my liquidity, and my goals all work together? And here's the most important point. I keep saying the most important point. Here's one of the most important points for a family or for an individual. What is the money actually for? Before we decide what to sell, what to invest, what do you actually want or need this wealth to accomplish? Do you want to buy a home? Right? Buying a home is a big one, of course, but with buying a home, there are all these little intricate parts. I need to have cash available for the down payment. When am I going to want to buy that home? What is the value of that home going to be? How much am I going to need for a mortgage? What kind of income and other assets am I going to be able to show the mortgage company? So all of this works in kind of a backwards chronology to determine what I need to do now based on when I might want to buy a house. Do I want to create some sort of financial independence to where I can rely on my wealth to fund my life for quite a while? Do I want to take a year away from work and just enjoy myself, just travel, just be with my family? Do I want to start another company? Do I want to start a charitable endeavor? Do I need to fund education for someone in my family or even myself? Something that I'm going through right now, do I need to be able to support my parents with some of this money? Or do I want to build long-term family wealth? Do I want to give to charity? All these are questions that you want to ask yourself about this wealth, this possibly newfound wealth that you have, and what you want it to accomplish. So different dollars can have different jobs among all those things I said. Buying a house, creating financial independence, funding education, and then there's short-term security or short-term money that I might need, which is things like paying my tax bill, paying my bills every month, paying for insurance, paying for kids to go to school, funding my retirement. All these have different tax treatments, different risk metrics, and they need to be treated differently. Near-term or short-term money needs to be treated differently in a different bucket than mid-term money, than long-term money that I might be looking at for 30 years retirement or something. So the goal isn't to make every dollar behave the exact same way. The goal is to give every dollar a job to do. And then when I give every dollar a job, then I can start breaking that wealth into different buckets and start talking about tax treatment, liquidity, risk management, diversification. This is where we get into having a conversation with the family, and you move away from just spreadsheets and just showing the number and getting excited. Yay, we're worth $3 million, $4 million today. But get to a conversation that often happens much too late, which is the conversation at home among the family. Does your spouse or does your partner, do other people in your family know the actual value of what you have? Do they know how concentrated it is and what it's concentrated in? What those restrictions are? When can we sell? What will it cost us to sell? Do we have to come up with cash up front? Do we have to have cash to pay for taxes? What would happen if the stock or if that token drops suddenly? And what would we change or not change in that process if it goes up or if it goes down? So a hypothetical is if your stock or if your token drops 40% before the lockup expires, before I can go spend it, are you prepared for that? If it drops 40% while you're sitting there waiting for a different tax treatment, are you prepared for that? Have you built your financial life around having this amount of wealth and all of a sudden that wealth goes down and now you can't really afford your life? But also a good hypothetical is what happens if it goes up 40%? What are we going to do? Are we going to sit there and go, no, we're going to hold for it to go up another 40 and another 40 and another 40? Do we have a plan in place that says at certain levels we're going to sell? And that goes to a conversation you have among your family, with your financial professionals. What are the ramifications from a tax, liquidity, diversification, and risk perspective? A financial plan the family doesn't understand isn't really a family financial plan. And remember, now you have one balance sheet, but multiple calendars. So for some people, you can have RSUs, or restricted stock units, that have different vesting schedules and therefore different tax treatments. You have options that might need to be exercised, and exercising those options actually requires cash to do so. And now you have a whole tax line or tax chronology that you have to go through. Your stock or your token is under a lockup, or it's unlocking or vesting soon. You have estimated taxes due quarterly, right? Based on what you've done in the past quarter. You have quarterly estimated taxes due, or you have your annual taxes due. Or maybe you want to do things like purchase a house, or a kid is starting college, or some big event that's happening. And so all those decisions that you have around your wealth should not be made independently. They have to live together, and they have to be looked at as a whole. They aren't separate problems. They are one balance sheet. So before planning, or planning before there is some sort of liquidity event, or planning before your quarterly opportunity to exercise your stock options or sell your RSUs comes, start thinking about what you actually have. What are the vesting dates? Let's put those on a calendar. What are the deadlines? How much cash will I have to exercise those? How much cash do we have to live our lives? What are the expected taxes based on what we want and need to do? And when are we going to have to pay those taxes? Do we have any personal spending goals? Is there something new we want to or need to spend money on? How do we feel about concentration or diversification in this asset that has helped make us wealthy? What do we feel about the concentration and diversification now? And have we made the right estate and insurance considerations too? Now that you have wealth, you have more to take. You have more that someone can sue you for. You have more to lose. You also likely want to make sure that anything that you've built this wealth in stays within the family, or stays within wherever you feel comfortable. It could be the family, it could be charitable endeavors, it could be a combination of all of those, but make sure that not only your value passes on, but your values pass on. What happens if the stock price or the token price is all of a sudden $20? What happens if it's $40? What happens if it's $60? What if the IPO is delayed for a while? Or again, what if we have bad earnings? No fault of mine, but the stock price went down. What are we going to do? What if the stock price goes up? So the idea is not to predict what the stock price or predict what the token price will be. The point is to prepare for what happens if it goes the two different directions, up, down, or it could even go sideways. What are we going to do? Because your goal, your idea is not to predict where it will be, but to prepare for all of those different scenarios. So remember, in closing, a liquidity event might be the finish line for the years you've had building a company, whether it's you're an employee or you're the founder, or the time you've been accumulating equity in some company. The liquidity event is the finish line, but financially it's really a transition from the possibility that we might be wealthy to now choices in terms of how we go about effectively and efficiently using that wealth. You now have decisions about concentration, about taxes, liquidity, investments, your family, and what you want your wealth to accomplish. The liquidity event may end one chapter, but your job is to make sure that that next chapter has a plan. So if you're approaching an IPO, a major vesting event, a token launch, another liquidity event, something else, please contact your financial professional. Contact us at Protocol Wealth and start making that plan early enough. Again, whether you already had the IPO, whether you are going to have the IPO, whether you've already launched the token, if your vesting is coming up, if your unlock is coming up, start talking to a financial professional so you can have a plan and strategies around all these different pieces that we've been discussing. Again, I'm Adam Blumberg, one of the co-founders of Protocol Wealth. Thank you very much.